Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Besides me is General Raj Shukla, who's coming on to Gunner Shot after a long time. And we are going to discuss today disengagement to deterrence in the context of India and China and what's happened on the LAC in the recent past. It is all nice to say that, look, we have disengaged with China, patrolling has recommenced X, Y, Z. But that doesn't stop China from coming back. And the million-dollar question, which we have not answered so far, is how do we stop him from coming back? And how do we stop him if he makes an attempt to come back? And that million-dollar question is something which I can assure you, neither General Raj Shukla or I will be able to, give you an answer over the next 1 hour. It will take a lot of such informed debates and discussions for us to have a cogent response to this, national issue. So, with this as a precursor to what we're going to speak, I request General Raj Shukla. General Raj Shukla, thanks a lot for coming, and I'll be really grateful if you could highlight and expand on the issues which I did rake up, and we'll take up the discussion as we go along. Over to you.
So, thank you very much, sir, and great pleasure reconnecting with you and your audience. Exactly as you said, sir, when this disengagement process was on, this is the thought which crossed my mind. That you see how the Indo-Sino-Indian relationship is held hostage to periodic disruptions along the LAC. Very often there is a deterrence breakdown, and then we start having these long periods of talk. The entire relationship is held hostage to what is happening along the LAC. And therefore, I thought that should we start looking at the challenge vis-a-vis China with a different lens? And do we need to move from what I say disengagement to fail-proof deterrence? Is it possible? And these are just some thoughts. So today we'll explore them on your channel, and then it can be built up. And the whole, the larger issue is how do we re-establish deterrence against China? That is the larger issue. And I would like to prioritize deterrence vis-a-vis war fighting. Because if you get to war, it by itself is an act of geopolitical incompetence. It is an act of some infirmities in your statecraft. So those larger issues of statecraft versus China is what I wanted to focus on. The second point is that for a long time, see sir, what happened in Kargil or Galwan, we say int failure. When will this end? Today you have persistent surveillance, you have so many other means. Oh, when will we say that we knew China was coming and we deterred him? So today it is possible technologically and in the other sense. That is what I wish to focus on. The next point that we, say CBM breakdown. So of course, CBM should not break down, but I'm saying that we should have such deterrence signatures that even if he wishes to violate the CBMs, he is not in a position to do so. So this is a point around the LAC. Can it be done? I have a certain view. I will wish to discuss it with you and with your viewers. Second, sir, is that now India is the 5th largest economy. It's soon going to be the 3rd largest economy. Many people say that we are the 3rd most powerful country in the world, which means we are in the big league now. There may be a large economic differential, but definitely it seems to me that US is number 1, China is number 2, and we are number 3. So in this interplay between a declining hegemon USA is still very powerful, no doubt. It is a very powerful brand, but it is declining in some ways. This rising challenger China and this aspiring Vishwa Bandhu. How should we recalibrate our statecraft? Do we need to move beyond territoriality and other issues of deterrence? It can't be the same, focus on the LAC. So it is in this context, that I wish to throw up some thoughts regarding deterrence, some concepts. What should these tools be across what domains should our deterrence spread? So, my first point that I wish to make is that can we create foolproof deterrence along the LAC? And so, sir, you would be knowing it, I know it. It was, I think, just many early 2000s that we carried out this exercise Divine Matrix, based on which we had decided that we will operationally balance towards China. So it was not that the thought was not there, it was very carefully thought through. Then, for various reasons, principally 2611 and other issues, we got stuck with Pakistan and we finally rebalanced after Galwan. If we had rebalanced before Galwan, perhaps Galwan would not have happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a very important point.
So
If we had
this,
been strong enough on the LAC before Galwan happened, Galwan wouldn't
yes.
have happened at all. Yeah,
And then, sir, now small things like if you see in Ukraine, there is a startup called Capella. In 7 months straight, they have, with I think a configuration of 7 to 8 satellites in the LEO and SAR satellites, which means you can see through clouds and at night, which is very important in the LAC context, because I think in a year of 365 days, we have something like 150 cloud
yeah,
cover days. So SAR is essential. And this Capella story is very interesting because this Capella startup, he goes across and he meets about 100 warfighters, generals, sergeants in the Ukraine conflict. And he says, what do you need most? And they tell him, we need capacity to see at night and through clouds. And in 7 months flat, he gets an order and he puts up this SAR configuration, which has changed the grammar and vocabulary of persistent surveillance. So persistence, and today, sir, with this IDEX system, we have a number of startups, many which have been mentored by your IIT, Galax I, and so on and so forth, who are in a position to do this. So I'm saying, having rebalanced now, we have a lot of reserves, mech, infra, there may be some infirmities, but with a lot of these cutting edge technologies, which we need to create into combat effects fast and take them to the squadron company fight, to the LAC. No more these technologies in this laboratory and that seminar, this endless stuff should end. If we develop a new procedure for this, it is very much possible, in my view, in 1 or 2 years. In any case, we do it after the event. I'm told now we are working on this SAR technology along the LAC very actively. So with this kind of troop, rebalancing with these technologies, it is possible to create fail-proof deterrence along the LAC. So not only persistent surveillance, ISR, dronery, giving some, integrated rockets, artillery to the theater commanders, army commanders, having plans to create simultaneous adversity. If the CBMs hold, very good. If they break down, if he violates, today we also have the capacity to create simultaneous adversity, because that gives our diplomats something to leverage on when they talk. And by this, what should happen is that our diplomacy must ride on military strength, at least along the LAC. And the reverse should not happen, that the diplomacy comes to bail out failures of deterrence ever so frequently. And then the whole broader Sino-Indian relationship becomes hostage to the LAC. So if we look at it afresh, fail-proof deterrence along the LAC in this limited context of no loss of territory, or if he does something, we are in equal position to do something. I think this is very much possible. And we should not in the future say that, there was an intelligence failure and this and that. That blame gaming should end. So this is the first concept of deterrence along the LAC. The second point that I wish to make is that there is the other reality. The other reality is that the power differential with China, if you take the defense component of that power differential, it is about $400 billion. If we are $100 billion defense budget, Enterprise Institute says he's $700 billion. If he's not, even if not 7, if he's 500, And if this differential is $400 billion, how do we narrow the gap? We have to give a very serious thought to this, because with this $400 billion, the capacity differential in the conventional domain is growing. And for various reasons, civil military fusion and all, because he's more efficient. One day we hear that he's got the biggest navy. Now we are hearing he's got the biggest air force. So if we can't meet him platform to platform, rupee to yuan, what do we do to address this gap in conventional progress? Now, here I'm saying, and I would love to hear your thoughts and also the viewers, here we need to change gears. We have to admit that in the conventional domain, it will take time for us to narrow the conventional lag. So here the deterrence must lie in investments in strategic instruments, which is AD, missiles. Now, within missiles, sir, we've seen in Ukraine how there are various layers. I mean, Storm Shadow has its own deterrence signaling. The Orange Shik, if I pronounce it right, it has its own
Orishnik.
deterrence. Orishnik. And there are very interesting nuances which have come out of this. So, should we invest in this or keep investing in that conventional prowess? We must invest in conventional prowess, but it will take time. In the meantime, this deterrence will come from things like AD topology, this drones, missiles, and so this is the area we must explore. And if this is the way forward, then we have to see what kind of drone missile force do we need, what kind of AD topology do we need, because Beijing is certainly looking at us, and there is nothing classified here. It is all in the open domain. I'll give an example of AD. Look at the investments that are being made when these missiles and drones are being fired. Let's take Israel, sir. So Israel, I mean, they have what, David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, Iron Dome. That is also proved inadequate. Now THAAD has been moved by the Americans. The Aegis destroyers, I'm told Aegis also has land systems of launch. How CENTCOM AD is, coordinating the regional AD of Saudi Arabia and Jordan and so on and so forth. So this whole AD enterprise, when we've had one of the most sophisticated instruments of the Chinese rocket force opposite us, we need to upgrade this AD in the strategic deterrence. And then our own drone missile force, we need to see what VA and VPs in WTC we must hit, how we must, be able to address Beijing, the prosperous East Coast. This is, after all, what is happening in Europe and West Asia everywhere. Now that Orange Shik is going to target NATO headquarters in Brussels, possibly Paris, Washington. So I think this is a weakness in our whole mindset of strategic deterrence. And if we start investing in this now, 5 to 6 years down the line, if we have fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, we can deter him in the strategic domain through this AD topology, this drone missile force. Look at the Oreshnik. I mean, you would be knowing it, but I'm told Max 16, 17, when it was launched in Dnipro, it was almost like a nuclear weapon, in the sense that its blast was tremendous. Its speed means that it is beyond interception of any AD system. Any AD system, it is beyond interception. Precision. At those speeds, I'm told the precision strike has really caught the West napping. And the message.
I just want to.
I just complete 30 seconds and the signaling is not only more targets in Ukraine, but also perhaps Western capitals. And the other signaling is that it can also be nuclear tipped. So I don't have a definite idea, but I want to raise this whole issue of fail-proof deterrence along the LAC and strategic deterrence. Yes, sir.
I go with you. In fact, I was just about to reinforce what you said. There's an article in Foreign Affairs which has come out just today, and it talks of how the Trump administration can measure up to China, or rather keep China at bay. And this is an interesting thing, which is right. I'll just read it out. It says the Trump administration must focus on making progress on two timelines. the 2-year problem of fielding more uncrewed systems and cruise and ballistic missiles in the Indo-Pacific. So the thing is, uh, cruise, ballistic missiles, and uncrewed systems, and as well as the 5 to 10 year problem of revitalizing the United States shipbuilding industry, which has been declining for
Absolutely,
decades.
absolutely, sir. This is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
So you picked it
So
up very well.
as you were speaking, I just picked that up and I said, let me read it out. I think you made some very interesting points. Let me, you know, put it across to you, and then we can move ahead. I have no doubt about what you said about persistent surveillance. That's the first thing. Uh, in terms of persistent surveillance, the adjunct to persistent surveillance is you need multi-data fusion. The second, you could have SAR imagery. What do you do with it? I mean,
Yes,
in fact, we've had SAR imagery capability not now for the past 10 years. But for the best part of this 10 years, we didn't know what to do with it. And today, that capability which we have probably is a little outdated. You could do with more modern capability. And the question is, do we have this capability in India? We have the capability in India. I'll not talk more than that. But do we have the capability to transfer it across all domains into all forces? We don't have. So you need to have a horizontal proliferation of technologies within our system. And that is something which I've started realizing of late, which we don't have. You see, we all talk of procurement at top speed and you know making good our structures, all that. But do we have this capability of horizontal proliferation of technology between key technology players like the Department of Atomic Energy, the ISRO, the DRDO, or the CSIR? These are the four technology providers, and maybe MIT, electronics. So that is something I think we need to do simultaneously along with this. And then you will see this business of simultaneous adversity, which you spoke of, will start kicking in. Because if you know in advance what's happening on the other side, simultaneous adversity is sure. You can be very sure of committing yourself to something.
absolutely.
And this
That's
is something
linked to persistent surveillance.
yeah, it's linked to persistent surveillance, what you're saying. And in fact, I've been given a lot of thought about it, and I thought, let me share my view on this with you. Because when you speak elsewhere, you could probably put it across. Unless you're sure what's happening on the other side, you can't do a pro quid quo. As simple
Yes,
as that, right?
absolutely.
We could not do a pro quid quo during the time of Galwan because we didn't know what the whole story was.
Bang
And
on.
that is the thing. So, bang on. So that is something that I think which we have to look at if you want meaningful deterrence. And then, the thing changes. And then this business of capacity differential. What we often fail to understand, like you rightly said, is you don't need to match him toe to toe, head to head, right? You need to match him with your toe and into his belly. And what is his belly in Tibet is what we have to factor in and develop technologies with that. I mean, in any kind of a condition, what you have said in terms of missiles, in terms of air defense, in terms of things like uh, you know the arsenic is not out of equation. What is out of equation, or rather with us, it's not as if we don't have a arsenic equivalent. Your Agni 5 which you fired is as good as arsenic. I mean, just for technically, what are these? These are all re-entry vehicles. When they re-enter the atmosphere, they're anyway traveling at 600 kilometers per second. It's not small from space. Any space re-entry vehicle. And if you put a proper guide bomb onto it, you can maintain the speed and it'll come at 10 to 12 Mach. I mean, it's not a Russian capability. We have this capability. But our capability, or rather incapability so far, is You have it. Have you operationalized it, fit
That
it
is the
into your deterrence matrix? That is the
yes.
issue. For example, we've just fired the one part of the triad day before yesterday. A 5,000 kilometer, 4,000 kilometer Agni 5. I mean, K4 is Agni 5. How do you operationalize it is a billion dollar question. Sorry for this interruption. Please go ahead.
Absolutely right. So now, so from what you have said, three, four thoughts have further come to my mind. Uh, so just look at how this has played out. So the West first has its HIMARS and its Javelin. In the first few months of the war, HIMARS create havoc. I'm told some 50 Russian ammunition depots were destroyed. So the Russians moved their ammunition depots backwards, and they find ways through their EW to disable the HIMAR, and the HIMAR becomes inaccurate. Now, the West now gets in these storm shadows and these ATACMs just to target the ammunition depots. So, within the whole missile business, there are various layers of deterrence, and these technical capacities have to be created into operational realities. And of course,
Yeah.
the larger signaling of hitting Russian heartland, and the Russians now come up with this Oreshnik. It is a so deterrence itself has so many layers. Precision has a quality of its own. Agni, the what you were saying is a wonderful instrument with us, but is it beyond AD interception? Because ATACMs and storm shadows are not. So I'm not sure of the technical details, but you have to
No,
operate in all these realms of speeds, precision, lethality, and then what you said, sir. It is extremely important that you combine ballistic, cruise, and drones because it complicates enemy AD. If you don't
yeah.
have this mix, the enemy AD will not be complicated. And so this point we have made very much time. The same foreign affairs. This is one on total war, where I think this lady talks of precise mass. So she says there
Yes.
was a time when
Precise
the
one.
emphasis was on mass, then it became precision. Now drones are your ability to deliver precise mass. Look at how they have altered all three domains of warfare. And drones are challenging air crewed platforms. I think we have reached the drone moment in air power. On sea, sir, we know drones and Starlings, what they have
Yeah.
done to the Black Sea Fleet. And on land, even Houthis have got drones. We are not moving fast enough. This point of data, I would really celebrate the day when the CDS or the chiefs say that my topmost priority is data. That data is, if they start saying that, what you're saying about data fusion and all that will happen. So it is in this domain, sir. I mean, Oreshnik is classic Brahmastra, at least if what one reads, and I'm
I,
talking.
I, I'll put it in context because one's dealing with this nonsense almost every
Yes,
day. It's not as if Oreshnik is something typical to Russia. Russia is playing up a nice game,
sir.
information war on everyone. Oreshnik or its equivalent doesn't have a deterrence or a defense. Any re-entry vehicle is a dicey affair. So to that extent, we have that. I'm okay with it. But what you said is very important. Layered defense, layered deterrence. As much as layered defense is important, layered deterrence is also important. That I think is the catchword of what you have said, layered deterrence. And we don't have to, also, my view is that we don't have to ape what is happening in the Russia-Ukraine war completely because our terrain, everything is different. For example, in our terrain, the biggest vulnerability of China is that its lines are exposed. They're just about 120 kilometers away from you, all along the border. You know, the Western Express Highway and the Eastern Express Highway, at no point is it more than 140 kilometers away from the crestline, except the little places where it's 200 kilometers. If you can control these two lifelines, he's finished.
Yes.
So, have you been able to deter him in this? That's the question I think we really need to we really need to think of. I mean, your views on this, and and this taking lessons from other places. Please go ahead.
So I think the principal reason why this has not happened fast enough is because our officers by training are not schooled in deterrence. Deterrence is a subject, as you brought out, it's a major study, and I'm certainly don't ape neither West nor Russia. We must
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
whole Indian school of deterrence, but think through it. And that is the
Yes.
whole what you were saying. I think we need formal curriculum, formal seminars on deterrence. And I'm going to push this now that we must develop our own way of thinking, deterrence in terms of long range precision, AD topology, complications. We don't hear people talking about this. I mean, my views are very raw. They are pretty, what shall I say, unsophisticated, but the thought has been crossing my mind. And if we can establish these two fail-proof deterrence along the LAC and tell the other, stakeholders in our statecraft that you don't worry, LAC, there'll be no breakdown, the relationship can grow, and we will invest in strategic deterrence, conventional capacity will take point at some time. And also now, sir, this I think point really has to be made that while deterrence is costly, wars are costlier. So you must invest in deterrence. And
Yeah,
the
I
other,
like that. I like that thought. Deterrence is costly, but wars are costlier. That's
so
the
this
game which
whole
people have to think of.
yes, sir. So this thinking mindset has to change. Or thinking on that. And surely, if you put this, a lot of these young officers will flesh it out. And the other issue, sir, is that for a long time we have assumed when we talk of this defense expenditure, percentage of GDP, all economic derivatives, we assume that geopolitics is constant, which is not. So, for deteriorating geopolitics, the time has come now to make a very strong case. And I've seen some people writing of late. I saw, I think, Takshila print some articles on how we just need to increase our defense spending. I was in a India Ideas conclave in Bangalore, and we had the finest economic minds there. And everybody was talking $10 trillion, $12 trillion, and very good minds. But what really amazed me was that we are assuming $10 trillion, $12 trillion as if geopolitics is constant. National security as an afterthought. So our national security concerns have to be woven into our economic tapestry. I wish to make this point, sir, that USA's statecraft was driven by Andrew Marshall, who was basically an economist, but an economist with an interest in national security. So our economists should start arguing for enhanced expenditures in defense. Otherwise, how will you secure this $10 trillion, $12 trillion economy? And of course, it can't happen all of a sudden, but some investments in deterrence, if we increase these progressively, not only fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, but larger deterrence will also be possible. And if we start doing it now, it will take 5, 10, 15 years to play out. So deterrence, defense spending, how do we play this big game between China, India, and us? So can India and US get together and complicate China's rise? I'm not saying that we can stall it, but can we complicate China's rise? So a good idea which comes to my mind is that these IDEX, ISET, and IndusX, these pathways of technological collaboration with USA. So if we can reach some modus vivendi with the incoming Trump administration on tariffs and technologies, we have just signed this deal when the Prime Minister went to Delaware between one of our startups and US Spacecom and other players in the US system on next generation chips, chips for green technologies and chips for next generation communications. Why can't we do similar collaborative deals on AI, robotics, and other places? Because it is this technological partnership, which we have every right to do. Some of it may also be non-public. This is some ways we can complicate China's rise. So we need to think in these domains also if we have to strengthen our deterrence with China. That is another point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, your point is valid. We need a technology partnership with China, sorry, with USA to deter China. And I will not say delay its rise, I say to cap its rise. Because otherwise, anyway, China will, after 10 years, you'll see it going down. That is inherent in China the way it is going. But for the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a problem for us. There's no doubt. And uh, on that, there's no doubt at all. But how to get technology partnership going through with USA is the bigger problem for us. And I think of all in the past 10 years, 15 years, what I've seen, the strongest bedrock of cooperation with USA is defense. And I feel that we are not exploiting enough to take it into defense innovation and defense production. So
Exactly.
that is
So
the
I see
point.
that is the point.
Yeah, it's
Pathways have been
there
created. We need to move faster now. Our bureaucracy.
move faster. Yeah. The second thing is we have to rethink, when you said rethink deterrence, we have to rethink deterrence in a different manner. I'll put this point across and I like your views on this. You see, we all are focused on the LAC. Deter China coming into the LAC. Why? Because we perceive the LAC to be weak or sensitive to us. So equally, what is sensitive to China? The ocean. How do you pose a threat to him? Even a minimalistic threat which deters him from doing anything on the LAC is the bigger question. And how do we build that deterrence through offensive capability is the point at stake. Uh, and how do you reorient whatever you build for the LAC also for the oceans is the issue. Your views on this?
Yeah. So this is a very interesting question. I may not be right, but my views are like
No,
this.
no, no, no.
And
Look. Let me put it this way, Raj. Today, when you said we'll talk about disengagement to deterrence, I've been giving it a thought, and I said, look, I'll take you off your normal script,
yes,
and let me put across some new ideas. Where we are both forced to think. Like you've been making me thinking, I'm also trying to making you think because unless we think through this game, we will not deter.
yes. So I mean, I'm just say let's
Yeah,
just
fine.
role play the CDS. So if the
Yeah,
CDS tells the army chief that these are your troops, this is your reserves, this is your logistics, infra के लिए इतने पैसे, ये ले लो technologies, ये startups हैं, इनको आप orders दो and do what you need. And now please don't bother me along the LAC. And having done that, now we have to see where do we invest more. My slight difference is, of course, seas are very important. But even before the seas, we must start investing in these, what shall I say, domains which are common domains.
common
Space,
domains, there's no doubt. Yeah, yeah.
missiles, they need a higher priority. And that is one. And second is, of course, the seas. Now, here I agree with you totally, sir. This 400 ship navy is not going to patrol China's coastline. Moment it does Taiwan, the larger issue than Taiwan is to break free of the first island chain. Moment it does, in fact, it already has a 100-day presence in the IOR, it is going to come to us. So here we need to do two things. Stop being coy and begin projecting power across Malacca instead of trying to do POK. That is a pretty should be a low priority option, and focus on projecting power this side. Having done that, can we create an A2AD system in the IOR, which is that, of course, you have freedom of the seas, come, but when you come, you will be under our total surveillance. And just like the Chinese built their A2AD over 2 to 3 decades, at the end of which now Americans are finding it difficult to enter the first island chain. It will take time, but that is how deterrence at sea will manifest. That we have capacities across Malacca, we start surveilling you, we can at some point even interfere in kinetic ways, but at the minimum we have an A2AD in our IOR. The Indian Ocean must not become a Chinese lake. So long term, that will take 15-20 years, and before that prioritize the emerging domains. And the raw conventional capacities or the lower order conventional capacities, in my view, will need to be given lower priority. But this will, of course, have to be thought through. So, fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, emerging domains next priority, and third is the seas. And if you do that and say technology, so I'll just give you one more example, I think, which is very apt. I'm sure so you have been following it, this Australian strategic policy indicator of
Yeah.
this.
Yes. SP. Yeah.
So, sir, 2000 to 2003, USA leads in 60 out of 65 technologies. And then the Chinese invest in all these technologies. And the latest 2019 to 2023, China has massively displaced USA. And today, China is leading in 47 out of 65. India, I was seeing that very carefully, is a third, a distant third, but it is ahead of the rest of the pack. It is ahead of UK, France, and all. So we have the talent, we have this stuff. If we put little emphasis, we can close this gap with China in these emerging technologies. And in, R&D, sir. I mean, I don't know what your figures are. My figures tell me America $975 billion on R&D, science. China 575. We are spending 2. Our great private sector, which talks so much, is putting nothing on R&D. $975 billion of America on R&D. I'm told some 700 come from the private sector. So how do we incentivize? And this, sir, I must commend to you these 2 books. One is Unit X by Raj Shah, and there is another paper by somebody of your namesake, Shankar. And all these smart Indians, unfortunately, have gone to USA and they are not here. He's written a lovely paper on defense reformation. And there he's talking, sir, it's a very good paper that if you reform the procurement system and all these things will happen. I'll just quote to you, sir. There's a chap called Panchanathan, again Indian, surprisingly. He's the boss of their American Science Foundation. Look at him, sir. He says that we are the offensive arm of Pentagon. We meaning American science in general. Without us, Pentagon is mere defense. I mean, I was amazed. Here, the Indian science guy will not even talk about defense. So this is the way we have to now, when I say big power competition, we are now in the big league. It is all these areas, if we change our thinking, deterrence, I gave my views, technology, R&D, $2 billion is a shame. And coming from the private, it's a bigger shame, sir. How will we ever catch
let me let me tell you this is my personal experience. Look, after retiring, I've seen the private industry very close up. No private industry in India. This is a shame. No private industry in India is prepared to spend on R&D.
Bilkul, sir.
I'm making I'm making a experiential statement. This is not theoretical.
What all can the government do, sir?
Government do. Yeah. They don't spend on R&D. I have dealt with all the defense biggies. The big players in defense, everyone I have dealt with, and no one spends on R&D. That's the first problem which we have. So this is a culture which we have to change, and and that culture also comes from the fact a lot also depends on the armed forces. The armed forces don't give comfort to the defense industry. That look, you spend on R&D.
You've been following the current chief. I was very impressed by when his talk of decade of transformation, and he's mentioned some of these issues. So I do hope he carries these things forward.
I do hope. I also hope, because unless you spend in R&D, unless you invest in R&D, unless the armed forces lead the way for investment, nothing's going to come. And I know, because I've been in the wrong end of R&D with the begging bowl. 8 years of begging.
No, I know that.
Like that chap wrote one book, 7 years in Tibet, no? So I'm going to write 8 years of begging for money. It's humongously, poor. Anyway, I'll not sing. But the fact is, we have the capability, which you said rightly so. We have the capability. And very surprisingly, my view is we don't have to spend five, six, $700 billion. We just have to spend a fraction of it. And since we will be on the up curve, the steeper part of the curve in the initial stages, what we'll get out of it is huge, right? Very huge. Another area which I want to focus on your views, you see, Pakistan and China have been carrying out a lot of exercises in the North Arabian Sea. Pakistan is going to get 8 Hangar class submarines. They've got 4 warships. They're now looking at J-35s, you know, and they're also looking at getting hypersonic technology and the latest missile technologies. They're taking all this into consideration, and Gwadar is likely to be the first overseas command of China. If that is so, you need to focus on the North Arabian Sea. Don't you think so?
No, see, absolutely. See, what worries me a lot. So look at this Russia, China. When Putin went to Beijing a year back or whatever, they spoke of this friendship without limits. Thereafter, no Article 4, 5, 6, 7. And the Chinese have given everything to the Russians. And we have been in denial from jamming equipment, CNC equipment, chips, microelectronics. Sab kuch to de diya, sir. North Koreans have given ammunition. People said, no, nothing will happen. Now 10,000 troops, I'm told they've landed up with self-propelled artillery. So this honey business, would be koi phrase, hai na, sir? Honey and something between China and under that honey funny, you have given everything. And I'm really worried about Pakistan, what you're saying, because Pakistan has fallen off our radar because they are in economic and political trouble, but their military capacities are growing. They will get everything of this kind from China, and they've been investing in drones, all the things you just pointed out in terms of sea power and all. We should not get caught napping with the smaller player, because we have been really neglecting it. And I have been raising this in the last Western Command seminar. You were also there, sir, where we not only have to invest, but also see what will be our instruments of response. Will it be a mechanized based response in the first instance, or other domains? Now, that's another area. Even Pakistan, we have to stop looking in tactical terms, but from the strategic lens. So I couldn't.
I agree. In fact, this chap, their chief, the Pakistan chief, just received that vice chairman of CMC, Zhang Jia, 2 days back.
So every month they are there. I really worry.
No. Every month they have, but that fellow came down to Pakistan. What have they discussed? They've discussed deployment and security of 3PC and all. But that's the veneer. The deal is that private military contractors or Chinese mercenaries are now going to get stationed in Pakistan. Now, what happens next? What is our deterrence going to be against this? The China-Pak collusivity which we talk of is actually going to the next level. When we are looking at the LAC, something is happening here. That is my thing. You spoke of, the conventional capability of Pakistan. Today, the conventional capability of Pakistan is based on more than 50% of Chinese equipment, all round. And that is the cutting edge equipment. The other 50% is the legacy equipment which is going away.
There is total interoperability, if not integration.
Integration. Pakistan and China. So that is the bigger problem I think we need to tackle. So your views on that?
No, absolutely, sir. I agree with you. I mean, this is happening for a long while, and my worry is that we are trying to, because it has fallen off the radar, we may end up underestimating Pakistan. And I think this is a larger game. You look at how this CRIC, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea axis is playing out globally. It could not be by coincidence. Thoigu been in Tehran for a long time, upgrading their AD systems. Russia and Syria. We all know now, sir, that Russia has given a lot of stuff to China in submarines, satellites. They have given satellite and missile technology to both North Korea and Iran, with the aim of boosting their range and also that they can target the US mainland. Now, this is the way they think, this is the way they act, and they don't put it in Article 4, Article 3, and all that. And the problem with democracies like India and US, sir, is that we'll make the right noises, we will develop the pathways, I said, Indus X, and all that, and then keep preaching to each other. By strategic autonomy, yay, oh, whereas these guys don't do it. So our democratic pathways really need to go strong, and I very much agree with you in this whole business of drones, space, and their navy, sir. Their navy, I think, there was a time when we had a solid lead. I don't think that lead is, quite so much the same. And in things like undersea and other areas, I'm sure they are getting a lot of assistance from China. Not out of any largest, because it serves China's direct interest.
I completely agree with you. Before I take questions, any more issues you want to highlight, or we'll take questions?
We'll take questions. If these issues I've only raised them, they need to be thought through, fleshed out. We need a whole shift in thinking about deterrence in this manner. Take it to
I think so. Next level. Yeah, I completely agree with you. To that end, what I'll do is I'll motivate a few people and we'll have a discussion here next on deterrence. And then maybe you could tell one of the think tanks to hold a conference on deterrence.
Yes,
right?
certainly.
And if they want me, I'll be there.
Certainly.